The Legend of Sunset Shimmer, Ocarina of Time. By Ganondorf 8. November 22, 2014. Chapter 7, An Unexpected Duo. Seeing the fire coming from the Dodongo's mouth made me think that I could just simply jump to the side again, but that wasn't an option seeing as I was right next to the monster, rendering that idea moot. Just as I believed that this was the end of me, something large jutted out in front of me and shielded me from the incoming flames.
"Oh, don't you worry about me, Sunset Shimmer, as it will take more than the flame breath of a Dodongo to knock me down,"
said Pinkie Pie. She had shielded me from the Dodongo by using her hammer to keep the flames from hitting me.
"I'll admit though that the singed flesh does sting quite a bit, and it does make holding my hammer more difficult, but I can manage once I get myself back up to speed." "Why don't you stay back and let us Gorons handle things? I know you mean well, but this is something you're not used to, and I don't want you getting killed. Hey Maud! Why don't we try that combo we used to use on those Tektites that frequented the higher elevations of the mountain? I know that this Dodongo is bigger than they were, but potato tomato, right? Anyway, stay here and watch how we take care of business,"
said Pinkie Pie as she rushed back in to continue fighting. It left me wondering if I had been lying to myself all this time about getting better at using my magic in this world. I wasn't just careless, mind you, but completely in over my head and at the hands of just one monster. If there were more of these monsters inside the Dodongo's cavern, I think the Gorons may need to find someone else to destroy them.
"Cheer up, Sunset Shimmer," began Spike. "How can I when I almost got myself killed again, and risking the life of someone else?"
I asked.
"You just didn't think clearly because your heart was saying one thing, and your head was telling you to do something else.
Sometimes it's best to lead with your head, as you need to be able to understand how to approach different situations. Darunia is right about the fact that the Gorons are used to fighting Dodo NGOs. Seeing you with that sad look on your face makes me feel sad, so maybe I should have done my job and given you the necessary aid that the great Deku Tree instructed me to do for you."
"This Dodongo is a bit on the small side, which means it has some growing up to do, but it's still a powerful monster with tough skin that makes it impervious to most damage. Throwing a bomb into its mouth is one way of taking it down, but then you would need some bombs,"
replied Spike.
"Is there another way to defeat it?"
I asked.
"Dodongos have strong skin everywhere except on their tails, which is the least protected part of its body."
Of course they are aware of this fact, and will do what they can to make sure to keep their tails safe from harm. I know that look in your eyes, Sunset Shimmer, and it's the look of someone who is about to make a big comeback and lead the way with your head followed by your heart.
"Yeah, I know you can't abandon your heart, as that just isn't how you do things, is it? I'm starting to get used to the way you think, which isn't a bad thing at all,"
replied Spike. I had a reason to fight now because Spike gave me the confidence to want to contribute. Pinkie Pie in the meantime was smashing the Dodongo with her hammer in all locations except the tail, but she was too excited to notice that none of her attacks were even doing anything to resemble damage. Ever since she regained her composure, she has become the party animal she's meant to be, but maybe this is a bad thing considering that she's swinging about a massive hammer which must weigh an awful lot, as though it were a stick or something.
It feels like it's been forever since I last got to fight something,"
said Pinkie Pie.
"Do not let yourself get caught up in the moment,"
said Maud.
"You don't need to worry about me, big sister, as you know that I can take care of myself."
All of that rage that had built up inside me this past week made me forget who I really was, but now I'm myself again and itching to make some noise. It's just that I need to let loose some steam, and bashing a dodongo into the ground is the perfect way to do just that.
While it may look like I'm not taking this seriously, I most certainly am, because our brothers don't have enough fighting experience in order to deal with the likes of a dodongo. That's why I'm making sure this thing doesn't go any further, as I want to make sure that my people have escaped to the higher levels where they'll be safe," said Pinkie Pie. "As always, your heart makes you a fine leader, but your head leaves something to be desired," said Maud. "I can't help being the way I am," smiled Pinkie Pie. "And I wouldn't have it any other way," smiled Maud. The dodongo then tried to make its way further into the city, but Pinkie bashed it on the head before throwing her hammer into the air, picking up the dodongo, throwing it back a few meters, and then catching her hammer as it fell back down to her. I was shocked that she was able to lift something so heavy without even breaking into a sweat, but at least she was keeping it distracted while I prepared to make my move. I had been spending the last couple of minutes focusing my magic in the hopes of unleashing some kind of hidden power which has eluded me so far. The results weren't as good as I was hoping, but I was able to get a small boost in power which should be enough for me to do what needs to be done. Without taking the time to think things through, I rushed straight towards the dodongo, yelling my own battle cry, which Maud immediately took notice of. "I think you may have rubbed off on her when it comes to your mannerisms, as she's charging without even thinking about it. She must be either very brave, very crazy, or a mixture of the two." "Well, what do you know? She's following both her head and her heart," smiled Pinkie Pie. "What do you mean?" asked Maud. "I told her to stay back because she was using her heart to fight instead of her head, but it looks like she's fighting with both head and heart acting as one. Her head is telling her to charge into the fray without worrying about it, and her heart is guiding her actions where she knows exactly what she needs to do in order to resolve the problem. Heh, I'm liking this Sunset Shimmer already, but somehow I feel like I've known her for a lot longer," replied Pinkie Pie. I weaved my way through the blasts of flame the dodongo was shooting at me, and with as much magical power as I could muster, I leapt into the air and struck its tail, causing it to fall to the ground stunned, but I had no time to celebrate, for it immediately got back onto its feet. Before it could anything else, a massive thud came from behind the dodongo as it fell to the ground once again, and standing there was Pinkie with a sheepish grin on her face. "I guess I kind of forgot that the tail was the weak point to hit. My excitement must have been too much for my heart to handle, so my head insisted that I keep on smashing away. My bad." "That was amazing, Sunset Shimmer," said Spike. "Well, I have both you and Darunia to thank for giving me the pep talk I needed in order to see this through," I said. "I'm glad that I was able to help you out, as that's what a fairy partner is for." This dodongo was pretty tough, despite the fact that it's smaller than your average dodongo, so that means that the regular-sized ones inside of the dodongo's cavern are going to be much tougher to beat. Good thing you managed to tap into more of your magic, as you're going to need it if you plan on getting the spiritual stone," said Spike. "I must admit that you certainly surprised me with that stunt of yours," said Pinkie Pie. "What surprises me is that she followed your way of thinking," said Maud. "Okay, so my actions aren't always the best course of action to take, but you can't deny the results they produce. Seeing that dodongo enter our city reminded me that I've been lax, and I for one can't just sit still while there are other dodo NGOs waiting to be smashed to pieces. You handled yourself pretty good, Sunset Shimmer, and for that you've earned my respect, but that fight has whetted my appetite for wanting to cut loose and knock about some heads, and that's why I've decided that I'm going to accompany you into Dodongo's cavern,"
said Pinkie Pie.
"You're going to what?"
asked Maud.
"I'm going to go with Sunset Shimmer into the Dodongo's cavern,"
replied Pinkie Pie.
"I know that, but why?"
asked Maud.
"Sunset Shimmer reminded me that I have a duty to protect my people from those who would inflict harm upon them. The Dodo NGOs have forced us to abandon our quarry, which has been the source of our food for years, and because of that my people have been harmed by the threat of being driven to extinction through hunger. Maud, this is something that I must do to ensure the Goron tribe will not succumb to starvation,"
replied Pinkie Pie.
"But didn't you say that she needed to destroy the monsters in order to claim the spiritual stone from you?"
"If you go in there with her and end up doing the majority of the workload, she won't be able to prove herself to you and getting the stone would be meaningless. I know that you must protect all of us as you are our big brother, but maybe you should rethink this a little."
"Why not just let her deal with the problem as you originally asked of her, and you can just sit back and wait for her eventual return? There will surely be other fights for you to charge into, but perhaps this is one of the ones you should calmly refuse to be a part of,"
said Maud.
"Your words do ring true to me, big sister, and I did say to her that to receive the Goron's ruby, she would have to destroy the monsters. However, my mind is made up and I intend on going with her into the Dodongo's cavern. I'll probably get some fighting done here and there in order to keep myself amused, but Sunset Shimmer will be doing most of the heavy work as this is her quest. Think of me as being there to see just what she is capable of doing, and stepping in whenever I feel the need to do so,"
said Pinkie Pie.
"That made no sense at all,"
said Maud.
"I know, but you have to admit that it was a pretty good speech,"
smiled Pinkie.
I should know better than most that when you make a decision, little sister, you stick with it no matter what anyone else says. That's just how stubborn you really are, and why I love you so very much as my sibling. I'll remain here and watch over things while you accompany Sunset Shimmer,"
said Maud.
"Just because I was battling a single Dodongo doesn't mean that I'm ready to fight straight away. Tell you what, Sunset Shimmer, you go on ahead and blow up the entrance to the Dodongo's cavern, and I'll meet up you later. Just give me about 15 minutes for me to whip myself into fighting shape. Are we all clear on this? Good. Then I'll see you in a little while,"
said Pinkie Pie with a ridiculous grin on her face. She then turned around and walked back to her room while singing to herself, leaving Maud and myself wondering just what happened.
"She's always so random when it comes to making a decision,"
sighed Maud.
"Does she always do that?"
I asked.
"Let's just say that Darunia can be rather eccentric when she needs to be, but at least it's better than having to deal with a raging Goron with hunger issues. It will take some time for the villagers to accept my sister as being back to her normal self, as they still fear an impending attack. I'm impressed with how you were able to keep calm when you dealt with her, so as far I'm concerned, you are an honorary Goron, and I'm sure Darunia feels the exact same way, but she wants to see it with her own eyes,"
replied Maud.
"Why would she want to help me out?"
I asked.
"You were willing to do whatever it took in order to help us in our time of need, and my sister realizes that you were being completely honest.
When it comes to bonds of trust and loyalty, we Gorons view that as being just as important as both family and rocks. Darunia sees you as someone she trusts with the utmost of loyalty, and not only does she want you to prove herself to her, she wants to prove herself to you to let you see just what kind of person she really is.
My brothers all look up to my little sister as she has the entire weight of our people on her shoulders, and she has managed to rise to the occasion each and every time. You should probably get going right now, as while my sister may be happy, she doesn't like being kept waiting,"
replied Maud. With that, she turned around and walked towards the large hole where the Dodongo came from, and began to poke at it for some weird reason. I just shrugged my shoulders and proceeded to make my way to where the bomb flower was supposedly located according to Pinkie Pie. As I made my way back up to the highest level, I found myself having to weave my way through numerous Gorons who were huddled up, but sleeping instead of fearing for their lives. The Gorons must really have nerves of steel to not be scared of something like a fire-breathing dinosaur-like creature, or that they are used to this sort of thing happening. Once I got back outside, the sun was getting closer to noon, which would mark the start towards the end of my third day here in Hyrule. While it has indeed only been 3 days, it felt more like several months or even years have passed since I first got here.
"Okay, so what were we supposed to do again?"
asked Spike.
"We need to find that bomb flower and use it in order to shatter the boulder that's blocking the entrance to the Dodongo's cavern, and according to what Darunia told us, it's located on a pathway right around here, and that a Goron has been watching over it,"
I replied.
"You mean like that pathway over there?"
asked Spike as he flew over to a small cave opening a few hundred feet away.
"Oh, right,"
I blushed, realizing that I noticed this pathway before when we first came up this way. Overcoming my slight moment of embarrassment, I walked down into the pathway, and sure enough the Goron who was sleeping there before was still there and still sleeping away without a care in the world. Upon a closer inspection, this girl looked an awful lot like Photo Finish, another student from Canterlot High who was very obsessed when it came to flash photography of any kind. Instead of simply going up to her and saying hello, I chose to take a more simpler approach by coughing slightly in the hopes that it would wake her up, and my plan succeeded as Photo Finish got up and yawned for a few moments before turning her attention towards me.
"Now what do you want with me?"
asked Photo Finish.
"I heard that you have been looking after a bomb flower which is growing in an area it shouldn't be growing in,"
I replied.
"Then you have heard correctly, little girl. Most Gorons question my dedication as being unusual and choose to ignore me because of it, but I feel that I am doing a good deed by watching over something that isn't the natural. Are you the messenger of the royal family of Hyrule? I heard from our big brother that someone from the castle was coming to pay us Gorons a visit,"
said Photo Finish.
"That would be me,"
I said.
"Oh.
So you are the one who has come all the way here to help us with the food shortage? You certainly do have a flair about you, what with that hairstyle you have, and it makes me yearn to want to resume my hobby of drawing pictures of what I see. But, that hobby has been put on hold ever since this bomb flower started to grow about 3 months ago, and I have been watching it bloom ever since."
"I assume that you have seen Big Brother by now, yes? I heard some kind of commotion going on inside the city, and assumed that it was the chief having another of her mood swings,"
said Photo Finish. I then explained to her about all that had happened within the last little bit.
"What? Big Brother asked you to use the bomb flower in order to open up the Dodongo's cavern?" "That's right,"
I answered.
"Hey, I didn't think about the fact that the bomb flower is located right above the entrance to the cavern, and all that needs to be done is throwing a bomb off the side and hope that it blows up the boulder."
Now that I mention it, none of us figured on doing what I just suggested. Oh well. I'm sure that we'll remember this for future considerations or something. Since you are wearing that Goron's bracelet on your wrist right there, you can pick up a bomb flower without any trouble. All you have to do is bend your knees, place your hands firmly on the sides of the bomb flower, and pick it up with all your might.
As soon as the bomb is plucked from the root, the fuse-like stem will begin to count until the bomb explodes about 10 seconds after the fact. Once the bomb has exploded, another one will grow in its place, and the process just repeats itself from there. Okay. You know what you have to do now, so go. Go. Go, go, go. Blow up the entrance already. In the meantime, I need to get back to sleep," said photo finish. She walked a few paces before lying down and falling back asleep. Then it suddenly dawned on me. They could have gotten rid of the boulder much sooner, and none of them even realized it. Why was it never considered? I mean, I thought it was pretty obvious to throw a bomb off the side of a mountain, but the Gorons found it difficult? Gah! This was without a doubt the most ridiculous thing I've ever experienced in my entire life, and I mean beyond Pinkie Pie ridiculous. "What's wrong?" asked Spike. "I just can't believe the Gorons never figured out that they could have blasted the boulder using this bomb flower," I replied. "Yeah, that does sound weird when you say it like that. With the food shortage having been a problem for them over the course of the past week, their minds were fixated on the idea of eating again, and everything else was just a blur in their minds," said Spike. "They could have figured this out a day after the boulder appeared and not a week in this case," I moaned. "Oh yeah. If they had realized it sooner, Kakariko Village wouldn't be on edge like it is right now, and Darunia wouldn't have descended into what constitutes as being insane. I think someone seriously dropped the ball on this one," said Spike. "No doubt about it, which is why I'm frustrated over the fact that it even happened in the first place. The damage has been done now, so all we can do is get that boulder out of the way, and get this mission of Dodongo destroying over with so that I can get the spiritual stone. First, I need to breathe and calm myself down, otherwise I'll end up losing my mind, and I'm supposed to be the destined hero according to many," I said. I sat down for a few moments and breathed in and out as a means of meditation in order to regain my composure, and with that done I walked over the edge of the pathway and looked straight down. Sure enough, there was the boulder which had been the source of many problems, so after doing some quick calculations in my head, and making the proper adjustments, I picked up the bomb flower and tossed it over the side where it landed right next to the boulder. Boom! The resulting explosion destroyed the boulder, uncovering the entrance to the Dodongo's cavern. "That was it?"
asked Spike.
"It certainly looks that way," I replied. "Well, I was expecting at least something exciting instead of that,"
moaned Spike.
"Now you know how I feel about this whole thing," I said. "Even though we can now go inside, it just feels anticlimactic knowing that it was so simple. Maybe we shouldn't tell Darunia that it was this easy, otherwise she could end up having a relapse, and having an angry Goron accompanying you anywhere is just asking for trouble. If you want to, you could always jump down to the pathway below, or maybe attempt to jump onto the platform where that piece of heart is located," suggested Spike. "Wouldn't that be dangerous falling from a great height?" I asked. "You'll probably feel some slight pain upon landing from such a high plateau, but you can easily survive a fall like that here in Hyrule without breaking any bones or getting yourself killed. No one really seems to understand why falling from great heights isn't a bad thing, given that all you get out of it is some slight damage to your health. I'm sure you'll be completely fine, seeing as you've fallen from great heights before back in that pony world of yours," replied Spike. "I've never done anything like that in Equestria," I exclaimed. "Weren't you one of the ones that could float down?" asked Spike. I was a unicorn there and you're thinking of a Pegasus, and they had wings which allowed them to do that. I had a horn which allowed me to use magic. If I had gone and done something that crazy in Equestria, the chances of me hurting myself was surprising low. My world certainly has problems when it comes to consistency, but that's another story right there. I'm going to play it safe and just simply walk down to the entrance the long way,
I replied.
And that piece of heart?
Asked Spike.
I'll have to make some kind of mental note to remind myself to pick it up sometime in the future when I've figured out how. Let's get down to the entrance before Darunia does, as I'm sure that she's just about finished getting into shape,
I replied. It didn't take very long to make my way down to the entrance, and sure enough, I got down there before Pinkie Pie, Maud, or any of the other Gorons had even arrived. Spike and I didn't have to wait for very long as Pinkie soon came onto the scene with her hammer attached to her back via a strap.
Ha!
I knew you'd be able to open up the entrance. I never doubted you for even a second, Sunset Shimmer, which is why it will be my pleasure to accompany you. Like I said to you before, anything you find in there that you feel will help you on your quest is yours to keep. It doesn't matter what it is, so don't feel that you need to ask me for permission or anything.
You know, it's been a long time since I last got to do something like this. Things have been peaceful around here, and while everyone else was happy, I was bored out of my mind because I craved action, and not just sit around and get involved in politics. My sister Maud was the only one of my brothers who understood how I felt, and deep down she wished that I could have had more fun in my life rather than have to deal with the leaders of the other tribes,
said Pinkie Pie.
Wow! I never knew that you had so many personal problems,
I said.
I find myself to be a pretty complicated girl who wants to satisfy the needs of my people as well as my own needs,
said Pinkie Pie.
Then by all means come with me into the cavern, as you could do with some adventuring, and maybe you'll get to see something new courtesy of me. I haven't bragged at all about it, and while I have no intention of starting to do so, I thought I would mention it to you seeing as you'll be witnessing it firsthand. I may not look like much, but I happen to be quite skillful when it comes to magic. Granted, I still have a lot to learn as I feel that it isn't as powerful as it ought to be, but I manage with what I have,
I said.
So you don't use a physical weapon but magic?
Asked Pinkie Pie.
I hope you're not disappointed,
I replied.
Magic may be different in that you use mystic arts, but it's still fighting all the same, so that works for me, ha. By the way, if you're wondering why I came down here on my own, it's because Maud stayed behind to keep the spirits of our brothers strong while I'm away. Maud may not look like it, but she can provide some serious pep talks which have more than brightened up our moods on a daily basis. Now, enough with all of the pleasantries, as we have some dodo NGOs to smash to pieces. I'll follow your lead as you are the heroine here, and I am merely tagging along,
said Pinkie Pie. She then removed her hammer from the strap and swung it about a few times before slinging it over her shoulder and beckoning me to go inside. I swallowed and then breathed slowly before walking into the cavern, with Pinkie following along with a serious look on her face. Almost immediately, I found myself staring right at a wall with no visible means of being able to break through. Pinkie decided that she would handle this due to there being no other means available, and with one swing of her hammer, she smashed a hole in the wall that was big enough for both of us to make it through. The next room turned out to be a massive one where there were additional walls which could be destroyed, but this time there were bomb flowers scattered about, which meant that I could take the initiative.
You need to be careful around here, Sunset Shimmer,
began Spike.
How come?
I asked.
There is a large lava pool straight ahead, and if you fall into it, getting burned is going to be the least of your worries.
You need to move about more carefully instead of simply running around like you did back in the Great Deku Tree. Based on what I'm seeing from this room, most of the exits are blocked off by walls, which I bet you can blow up if you use a bomb flower.
There is one exit on the far left that has iron bars blocking it, so you may need to hit some kind of switch in order to open it up. Also, watch out for the Beamos, which are those creatures with the single eye. They don't move at all, so they are easy enough to avoid, but if their gaze spots you, they will shoot a laser beam from its eye, which can cause some serious damage. Apparently, it doesn't like smoke getting into its eye, so I suggest using bomb flowers,"
replied Spike.
"This Hylian shield I've been carrying about with me should prove useful in protecting myself from those laser blasts. I have no intention of running away like I did last time, Spike, for this time I need to be serious,"
I said. That was when I noticed something right in front of me, which made my jaw drop before recoiling it back, followed by saying a word typically used when talking about something awful.
"Gross. What in Equestria is that thing at the back of this room? It's been a while since I've seen that fellow hanging up there,"
replied Pinkie Pie.
"What is that?"
I asked.
"That is a Dodongo, or rather a dead one, whose spine was used to serve as a massive support beam to keep the ceiling from caving in, and its skull serving the role of an awkward decoration piece.
It's been here long before we Gorons settled on Death Mountain, and many of my brothers are unsettled by the fact that they are always greeted by this every time they come in here."
"This Dodongo is actually a king Dodongo, which is one that rose above the others by growing to a massive size to become dominant among the rest of its kind. I suspect that there is a new king Dodongo somewhere in this cavern, which means we'll be having quite the fight on our hands,"
replied Pinkie Pie.
"Do you think this king could be the source of the Dodongo outbreak that forced your people to flee?"
I asked.
"It's possible, as Dodo NGOs travel about underground in a group, with one of them serving as the king. Then again, the king has a tendency to go off on its own because it believes itself to be the most powerful. Because of its large size, it will most likely appear in a large room that can accommodate its bulk, but then that does me a world of good, as I need all the room I can get in order to cut loose and fight to my heart's content,"
replied Pinkie Pie. All of this talk about fighting does make her sound like she was discussing the plans for throwing a party, but I have to remember that she is someone else in this world, and not the friend I've come to know. After jumping across a small gap to reach the left side of the room, a large chest was there out in the open, so I decided to open it and see what was inside. Within it was a piece of paper which Spike said was a map of the cavern, which I could use in order to find my way around. Looking at the map, Dodongo's cavern certainly was complex, with rooms covering quite a large distance, and based on what I observed upon entering the cavern, the only exit I can see was on the opposite side of the room closest to the entrance. Getting to there was simple enough, but the Beamos nearby made me feel uneasy, but I quickly remembered Spike's advice and picked up a bomb flower in order to blow it up. Boom! Then I picked up another one and used it to destroy part of the wall, revealing a new passageway. Boom! It was pretty dark, what with the lack of light, but I had to proceed on, otherwise I wouldn't be getting anywhere.
"So far so good,"
I whispered.
"Apart from that Beamos you destroyed, there hasn't been anything in the way of monsters,"
said Spike.
"Really? Then what do you suppose is making that sound?"
I asked.
"That sound doesn't sound normal,"
replied Spike. Just as I was about to laugh at the fact that Spike said sound twice without realizing it, something small burrowed its way out of the ground and began to move quickly towards me. Pinkie Pie immediately took action and smashed her hammer down on top of the creature, causing it to explode, which certainly was unexpected.
Baby Dodongo. While you may think it's harmless just because of its looks, know that it will charge towards you in an attempt to ram you, but if you can outrun it, it will eventually burrow its way back underground and move on. When defeated, it will explode after a while, so make sure you're out of the way when that happens. So that little creature can grow up into the one we saw back in the city?
I asked.
Quite the growth spurts they have, don't they? In any case, baby dodo NGOs lack any kind of power if they attack on their own, but they can cause a problem if several of them decide to attack you at once. Walk slowly so you can prepare yourself whenever they come out of the ground,
replied Spike. I proceeded to walk further along, noticing that the roof had gotten lower, and that there were several pipes hanging up, which made no sense at all. 2 more baby dodo NGOs then came out of the ground, but I used my magic to quickly take care of them from a distance, making their explosions a non-factor. Walking along after that, another door with iron bars blocked our path, but there was a blue-colored switch nearby along with 2 statues which looked rather suspicious. Stepping on the blue switch raised the bars, but stepping off of it to open the door caused the bars to come back down.
How do we get through this?
I asked.
That blue switch is referred to as a pressure switch, where you need something heavy to put onto it so that the switch will stay activated. Maybe if you push one of those statues, you can use it as a paperweight and keep the bars raised. Let's hope that you've gotten better at pushing heavy objects around, as what happened back at the castle is still something I like to laugh about,
replied Spike. Once again his smugness became him, not to mention his sarcasm made me consider asking Pinkie to push the statue, but that would be taking the easy way out, which isn't my style. Each statue looked harmless enough, so I grabbed the closest one and pulled it along as hard as I could. It was even heavier than the crates of milk, but I had to prove that I could handle this kind of work. After what felt like an eternity, the statue was on top of the switch, and the bars raised once again.
"You're a lot stronger than you look,"
commented Pinkie Pie.
"I could have asked you to do that for me, but I had to do it as this is my journey after all,"
I said.
"And you should enjoy all of the experiences that come from being on it."
"Like I told you before, I'm just here to assist you whenever you need it, so for the most part I'll be hanging around admiring the scenery, and occasionally cracking jokes to myself to pass the time. To be serious here for a moment, when I saw you handle that Dodongo earlier, you proved me wrong, as I originally doubted that you would be able to help us Gorons out.
I cast you aside without even considering your potential, all because I based you on your appearance alone. I do have a small doubt as to whether you can succeed in saving my people, but these coming trials in the cavern should remove those doubts. It may sound like I'm putting pressure onto you, but you must learn that sometimes pressure can make you achieve impossible feats. When your back is in a corner and you feel that all is lost, something deep inside you sparks like a roaring flame, and that's when you unleash a force that you didn't even know you had,"
said Pinkie Pie.
"That didn't make that much sense," I said. Maybe I did jumble up my wordplay a little bit, but the point is that you can prove anyone wrong by defying expectations,"
said Pinkie Pie. Coming from the likes of Pinkie, that was both heartwarming and downright creepy. I decided to just let that fly over my head, and went through the now unlocked door into a small room that featured nothing much of interest aside from several black-colored things on the walls, and another door at the far end of the room. Occasionally, the sound of flapping wings could be heard, which made me suspect those things were probably some kind of bat.
"What are those things, Spike?"
I asked.
Those are keys which love to swoop down on you from above in order to hit you, and then immediately move on until they are out of range. Since you have that fairy slingshot you picked up inside the great Deku tree, you can put it to good use by picking them off one by one. As long as you don't get too close, they'll just remain where they are, and be completely helpless. I should warn you that using fire of any kind will not work on a keys, as all it will do is set them on fire,"
replied Spike.
"That means my magic is useless against them," I said. "If a keys is hit by fire, it becomes a fire keys, where it basically becomes a mobile ball of fire. Fire keys will also swoop down on you, but upon making contact with their target, they will lose their flame and become ordinary keys again. Anything made out of wood will automatically get burned to ashes if a fire keys hits it, but that shouldn't be a problem for you, Sunset Shimmer. Just like the regular keys, fire keys can be picked off using projectiles, so whenever you run into them, just use some bullets and you're good," said Spike.
Taking out my fairy slingshot, I took aim at the keys and fired Deku seeds at each of them, destroying them one at a time until the room was cleared. This made walking to the door a breeze, and upon opening it, we entered a very large cavern that had a massive lava pool with a number of platforms to traverse to the other side, where there was another door that was barred shut. I then noticed that the door we came in from had also been barred shut, which meant that we were stuck in here.
"There's something odd about this room," said Spike. "In what way?"
I asked.
"I can sense a strong evil presence coming from somewhere, so I suggest that you and Darunia get ready for something to come our way,"
replied Spike. It was like he was a psychic or something, for the instant he said that, a strange noise sounded out, and two creatures fell from above and onto the platforms. Each one looked like some kind of bipedal lizard, and they held small daggers that could be mistaken for swords. The only other thing of note was the spiked shoulder pad they each wore on their right shoulder.
"Be careful, Sunset Shimmer, these are Lizalfos, and while they may look funny looking, they are deadly with their weapons. Make sure to use your shield well, and watch their movements carefully as they tend to strike fast. Attack them when they drop their guard, but also know that they can take quite a beating before they've had enough." "Do you think these creatures are keeping us trapped in here?"
I asked.
"Most likely, which means defeat them both, and we can move on to the next room,"
replied Spike.
"Now this is the kind of thing that makes my blood pump, and my hammer itching for me to fight. Ha! This is going to be fun, so why don't we pick a partner and smash them to pieces to make the doors open? I'll take the one over there, and that one right there has got your name on it. Come on, Lizalfos. Show Darunia what you're capable of, and I promise to go easy on you,"
said Pinkie Pie. I had no idea if she was being serious or taking things seriously enough, but it looked like Pinkie had pretty much determined who was going to do what. The Lizalfos that I had been given then started to swing its sword in a chopping pattern which made it easy to dodge, and using my magic proved to be very effective as usual, but Pinkie chose to take the more straightforward method, simply smashing her hammer about and disregarding her own safety in order to get the job done.
"Yeah. Come on. Show me what you've got."
The Lizalfos that was fighting her performed the same chopping pattern with its sword, and she blocked each one simply by moving her hammer to repel each blow one after the other. After repelling about a dozen of these blows, she then began to yawn as though she were bored with the whole thing, and here I was struggling to avoid getting hit and striking back with my magic.
"How in the world is she finding this too easy?"
I asked while dodging more sword swings.
"Darunia is a fighter who has been doing this sort of thing her entire life, so she's used to the idea of fighting everything by smashing it into the ground. If you want my opinion, just leave her to do things her way,"
replied Spike. I wasn't so sure if that was a good idea as Pinky looked as though she was ready to fall asleep, but I turned out to be wrong as she then used her hammer to shatter the Lizalfo's sword into pieces.
"I was hoping that you were going to give me a challenge, but I guess all you did was make me feel bored. There's no fun in fighting if it's too easy, and you clearly didn't give me a challenge, so you might as well just go away,"
said Pinkie Pie. She then smashed her hammer down hard on the back of the Lizalfo's, which almost caused its eyes to bug out, and then she hit it in the back a second time, defeating it.
"That was rather disappointing, as I was expecting that one to at least test my skills, but it seems that I was too much for it to handle. And how about you, Sunset Shimmer? Did you manage to defeat your Lizalfo's?" "As a matter of fact I did,"
I replied as I applied the finishing blow onto the Lizalfo's I had been fighting.
"Then I wouldn't get too complacent if I were you, for if you haven't noticed yet, the bars on the doors are still down, which means those two Lizalfo's weren't the ones keeping us locked in. Now I'm starting to see what's going on here, and I'm not looking forward to the next part,"
said Pinkie Pie.
"What do you mean?"
I asked.
"Lizalfo's often travel in packs where they send their weakest members to scout ahead, and fight off against anything they perceive as a threat. The scouts are unfortunately killed, as the pack would prefer to salvage the strong and be rid of the weak, and the rest watch the proceedings to determine a course of action. The reason I was acting bored was because I wanted to see if that Lizalfo's pair were either the real deal, or weak scouts who were sent to be killed, and my lack of difficulty proved it. We faced the latter in this case,"
replied Pinkie Pie.
"How strong then are their strongest?"
I asked.
"Their strongest are able to match even the likes of me when it comes to pure strength. Now the question to ask next is, where would the rest of them be in this room where they can watch our every move?" "They would need to be at a distance to be able to see everything, and since those scouts came down from above, that would mean the rest are right above us and planning an ambush,"
shouted Pinkie Pie. She then raised her hammer as a means of pointing it upwards, and I looked in the same direction in order to see what she was talking about. My face then turned white, as far above us was a cliff edge where someone or something had placed a large stack of boulders, and behind them were the silhouettes of what I assumed to be more Lizalfo's. Without any kind of warning, the boulders suddenly came tumbling down and crashed into the ground. One of the boulders landed right next to me, with the shrapnel from the impact hitting me in the face.
"I can't see,"
I shouted.
"Hang on, Sunset Shimmer. I'm on my way,"
shouted Pinkie Pie, but just as she was starting to make her way towards me, another boulder came down, and struck her in the back, causing her to fly forward and land hard on her stomach, according to the sounds her body made as she landed.
"Grya! They managed to knock me down? They've got a lot of guts to do that to the big boss of the Gorons."
At that moment, more boulders came down, with the largest of them hitting Pinkie in the left leg and trapping it.
"My leg! It's stuck underneath this boulder, and I think it may even be sprained."
Things were starting to get worse now, as my vision was out of commission, and Pinkie wasn't even able to move. As she started to smash the boulder trapping her leg using her hammer, I tried to regain my sight, but it wasn't working, as the shrapnel had really gotten to my eyes. Then the sound that was made when the first two Lizalfo's attacks sounded off again, and roughly a dozen of them jumped off from the cliff edge. The scouts had performed their task, even if it had cost them their lives, and now the rest of the pack were about to take full advantage of our weakened state. To be continued. Chapter 8, Dazzle of the Great Fairy.